The note dropped like it had been waiting for me. I was in the car, running on autopilot, crossing things off a never-ending wedding checklist. Pick up the suit, confirm the caterer, text Logan back. My head was a storm of excitement and nerves. It happened when I reached up to adjust the sun visor. Just a quick flick, and then flutter. A folded slip of paper drifted down and landed on my lap like it had been hiding there for weeks. I stared at it, confused. The kind of confused that slows everything down like time takes a breath. It wasn't a receipt. Wasn't a to-do list. It was a note. Handwritten, no envelope, no name. 5 words, etched in thick black ink. She's not who you think she is. That's it. No hello. No warning. No signature. Just that. At first, I laughed. I'm not gonna lie, Logan, my best man, has a messed up sense of humor. The guy once printed fake pregnancy results just to mess with his cousin. This felt like his kind of joke. Drop a cryptic note the day before the wedding and watch me spiral for fun. I even texted him a photo of it with a laughing emoji. But he didn't reply. Weird. But I brushed it off. Tossed the note into the cup holder and kept driving. Told myself it was a prank, maybe even from my cousin Aiden, who never liked dowry. Probably thought it'd be funny to mess with the groom the night before the big day. But I couldn't shake it. The handwriting looked familiar, but not in a comforting way. It felt careful. Sharp. Like whoever wrote it didn't want to be traced. It wasn't sloppy or rushed. It was precise. Like the words had weight. Purpose. And the way it was hidden up there in the visor, like it was waiting for the right moment. I didn't say anything to Dallery when I saw her later that evening. I didn't even bring it up to Logan again. But something in me had shifted. I didn't know it yet. But that note wasn't just a warning. It was a fuse, and it had already been lit. What would you do if you found something like that the day before your wedding? Would you laugh it off? Or trust that little whisper in your gut? Let me know in the comments. And if you're still here, make sure to like this video and hit subscribe, because what I found next changed everything. The note should have rattled me. It should have stopped me in my tracks. But love can make you blind, and I was neck deep in it. I met Dallery Tang 2 years ago at an art exhibition hosted by Armani Blair. It was one of those sleek, curated gallery nights where the champagne flows too easily and art costs more than most people make in a year. Armani had invited me personally. He said there'd be collectors, artists, and the kind of woman who doesn't waste time pretending. That woman turned out to be Dallery. She was standing alone in front of this massive abstract painting, a swirl of black and gold that made no sense to me. But she looked like she understood it. Not just understood it, felt it. I remember walking up beside her, trying to be casual, and saying something completely dumb like, "Do you actually like that, or are you just pretending to be deep?" She didn't even look at me, just smirked and said, "It reminds me of people who ask bad questions at art shows." I was hooked. There was this pull to her, something magnetic. The way she moved, the way she spoke. She was beautiful, yeah, but it wasn't just that. She was quick, sharp, and calm in a way that made everyone else feel like noise. And for some reason, she looked at me like I wasn't noise, like I was something solid in the chaos. We started dating a week later. 6 months in, we moved in together. She said she liked how quiet I was when I worked. I liked how she lit up a room without needing to say a word. I told her everything about the software company I co-founded, the investments I rarely talked about, the deals I kept off the books. She listened, asked questions, remembered the details. Looking back, maybe that should have been the first red flag. She remembered everything. But at the time, I thought it meant she cared. The day after the note, I was back in full groom mode. No time to obsess over cryptic messages when you've got a wedding to land. And trust me, ours was no backyard barbecue. Guests were flying in. Florists were double-checking arrangements. The vineyard was being transformed into this Pinterest-worthy dreamscape. Lace, candles, violinists, all of it. And I was busy trying to keep everything from collapsing. Logan Vega, my best man, Showed up in a wrinkled dress shirt and 2 different socks, holding coffee and cracking jokes like it was any other Saturday. "You look like you haven't slept in 3 days," he said, handing me the cup. "You getting cold feet or just running a startup on your honeymoon too?" I laughed, even though my stomach was tight. "I'm good," I told him. Lie number 1 of the day. Then there was Aiden Camacho, my cousin, brutally honest since we were kids. He showed up with that look. You know the one. The face people make when they don't trust someone, but they're too tired to argue anymore. "Still going through with it?" he asked me while tying his tie in the mirror. "What kind of question is that?" Just wondering if the guy who used to read contracts with a magnifying glass is the same guy who's now handing over his life to a woman he met at a gallery. I rolled my eyes. "That woman," I said, "is different." He didn't answer, just stared at me for a second, then walked out. I shook it off, told myself he was just being protective. That's Aiden's way. Burn bridges to save people from walking into bad ones. And then there was Troy Finley. Troy's not blood, but he's more of a father to me than my actual one ever was. He invested in my company when it was just a sketch pad and a hope. Built me up when no one else believed in the vision. He arrived with his wife, dressed like old money and smiling like a man who thought everything was perfect. "Proud of you," he said, giving me one of those long, 2-handed shoulder grabs. "You picked a good one." I smiled back, and for a second I almost believed it. Almost. Everything looked right on the outside. People were laughing. The staff was handling things. Dallery was upstairs, getting ready, probably practicing her vows in that calm, perfect tone she always had. And yet, that damn note still sat in the back of my mind like a splinter I couldn't dig out. I had no proof, no reason to question her, but that feeling, that whisper in your gut when something doesn't line up, it was starting to get louder, and I hadn't even opened her luggage yet. If you're watching this thinking, "Nah, it's probably nothing," that's exactly what I thought. But I was wrong. Dead wrong. Stick around. Because what I found next wasn't just unexpected, it was terrifying. It wasn't just a suitcase. It was a loaded gun with the safety off, and it had my name all over it. I wasn't even supposed to be there. Dallery had booked a suite at the Vineyard Hotel to get ready with her bridal party. Hair, makeup, champagne, the whole soft focus fantasy. I'd offered to drop off her last suitcase, just to be helpful. It was her favorite one. This ridiculously expensive, cream-colored designer thing with gold hardware and a luggage tag that probably cost more than most people's rent at IT was light. Suspiciously light. I remember thinking that. I carried it upstairs, nodding at the hotel staff, half listening to some planner on the phone yelling about flowers arriving late. When I got to her suite, no one answered. I knocked again, nothing. Maybe they'd gone down to the spa. I could have just left the bag by the door. Should have, but I didn't. I used my spare key card and let myself in. Just to drop it inside, that's all. But as I wheeled it across the floor, the bag caught on the corner of a rug and tipped. The zipper popped open. I kneeled to fix it, annoyed at myself for not being more careful. That's when I noticed it. The lining of the suitcase was peeling back. Not worn or torn. Peeled, like it was meant to come off. I pressed my fingers against the inner layer, and the whole bottom shifted slightly. Click. There was a false bottom, and inside, hell opened up. There were 4 fake IDs, all with Dallery's face, but different names. Different birth dates. Different states. I picked up each one like it might burn my skin. She looked the same in every photo, calm, confident, beautiful, like someone who knew how to disappear. Underneath the IDs were photos. Photos of me. Not selfies. Not memories. Surveillance-style shots. One of me and Logan at a private investor meeting downtown. Another of me in my office with Troy. And another, God, I still feel my stomach drop thinking about it, of me asleep in bed. From inside our house. She'd been documenting me. I didn't know what hit harder. The fact that someone was watching me, or the fact that she was the one doing it. At the bottom of the compartment was a flash drive. A black stick with a red label. It read in all caps, Keller Assets Plan. My throat went dry. I didn't even think. I just shoved everything back into the suitcase, zipped it up, and walked out of the room. I don't remember riding the elevator down. I don't remember getting back to my car. I just remember sitting in the driver's seat, my heart pounding so hard it felt like it would rip through my ribs. I held the flash drive in my hand like it was wired to explode. This wasn't a prank. This wasn't cold feet. This was a setup. And the woman I was supposed to marry the next day, she wasn't just hiding something. She was planning something. Something big. You think you know someone. You give them your passwords, your plans, your future. Then you find a suitcase with your entire life broken down like a business proposal. That's the moment it stopped being about love. That's the moment I knew I wasn't just a fiancé. I was a target. Sometimes the truth doesn't hit you like a bullet. It creeps in slowly, memory by memory, until you realize you've been living inside a lie. I parked outside my apartment and just sat there. The engine was still running. Flash drive clutched in one hand, like a grenade I didn't know how to pull the pin on. My phone buzzed. Dallery. A text. Everything okay? Can't wait to see you later, 2 hearts. I didn't answer. I couldn't. I went upstairs, locked the door behind me, and pulled the blinds. I turned off the lights, like I was trying to hide from something, even though the only thing chasing me was the truth. And then I plugged it in. The flash drive loaded fast. No encryption, no password. Almost like she wanted it to be found by someone. Just not me. The main folder was labeled Phase 4, Final. Inside it were subfolders with names like Pre-Wedding Assets, Investor Access, and Shell Transfer Logs. But the one that hit hardest? RK Holdings, White Plan. I clicked it open. There were spreadsheets, ledger transfers, timelines, diagrams showing how my post-honeymoon absence would give her a clean window to move everything, stocks, savings, crypto, company access, to a single holding account. A shell company, registered under Armani Blair's name. Armani, my friend, the guy who introduced me to her, the guy who told me she was unlike anyone else. He wasn't on it. My mouth went dry. There was a PDF, a contract, digital signature at the bottom. Name, Rena Leung. Alias, Dallery Tang. Role, extraction lead. Partner, Armani Blair. They weren't just in a relationship. They were in a partnership, a criminal one, and I was their mark. That's when the flashbacks started rolling in, like dominoes falling in perfect, cruel rhythm. One night, about 4 months into our relationship, I remember Dallery curled up on the couch next to me, asking casual questions. What my company did, how the shares worked, if I ever had backup trustees. At the time, it felt like curiosity. Now it felt like reconnaissance. Another time, I'd mentioned a prenup half-joking. Her smile had evaporated in an instant. You think I'm here for your money? I remember how fast her eyes welled up. She played it perfectly. Hurt, betrayed, silent. I backed off. Apologized. She had turned it around on me, like a pro. That was the moment I dropped the idea altogether. And then there was that weird dinner party when she casually said, "It's crazy how Armani and Troy hit it off, right?" But they hadn't met. I was sure of it. Troy had been out of town. Armani wasn't even invited. I remember pausing then, asking her to explain. She'd waved it off like she'd mixed up names. Maybe she had. Or maybe the con was leaking at the seams. I leaned back on the couch, staring at the screen. I felt cold. Not angry. Not even heartbroken. Just stupid. She had played me from day one. Tracked me. Watched me. Memorized my routines like I was a character in some script she was rewriting. I wasn't her fiancé. I was her assignment. And the wedding? That wasn't about vows or love or forever. It was the finish line. The weirdest part? A part of me still wanted her to walk through the door and say it was all a mistake. That it wasn't real. That there was another explanation. But there wasn't. I had the contracts, the accounts, The photos, the alias, Dallery Tang, didn't exist. And the woman I loved? She was never mine to begin with. If you've ever ignored a red flag because your heart was louder than your head, you're not alone. But the next part is where I stopped being the victim and became the storm. I didn't sleep that night. The screen from my laptop stayed glowing, casting long shadows across the living room as I sat there, frozen. My mind wasn't just racing, it was unraveling. I'd just seen my whole life flipped like a table at a card game. And the one person I wanted to talk to, the one person I thought I could trust, was the guy who made me laugh when I couldn't breathe. So I called Logan. It was just after 2 a.m. He picked up groggy, voice hoarse. "Dude, you know what time it is?" "I need to ask you something," I said. He must have heard something in my voice, because he sobered up fast. "Yeah, what's going on?" "That note. In my car." Long pause. "She's not who you think she is, one." "Yeah. I didn't write it, man." "Then who did?" Another pause. Then, "You might want to call Aiden." I hung up and called my cousin. He answered on the first ring. "I was wondering when you'd figure it out," Aiden said, calm as ever. "You left the note." "Yeah, I couldn't tell you outright. I didn't know how deep it went, and I didn't want to tip her off. You needed to find something on your own first. I just gave you a nudge." I stood in the kitchen, hand gripping the edge of the counter, so hard my knuckles went white. "Aiden, what do you know?" That's when he told me everything. He'd seen Dallery 3 months ago, alone, at this out-of-the-way cafe on the edge of the city. Not strange in itself, until he saw who she was with. They weren't talking like friends. They were whispering, passing a phone back and forth. At one point, Dallery took out a manila envelope, slid it across the table. Armani nodded. It looked like a handoff. Aiden didn't say anything to me then because he didn't have proof, but it didn't sit right with him. So he started watching her, quietly, casually. When she left the apartment, he sometimes followed from a distance. Saw her meet with people he didn't recognize. One of them had plates from Washington State. That's when he really started digging. Turns out, Dallery had another name before this one, Rena Leung, and before that, probably something else. 2 years ago in Seattle, a tech startup founder, just like me, lost half his equity to a fiancé who vanished the day after their wedding. No trace, no bank records, just gone. Guess who introduced that founder to the woman? Armani Blair. Same playbook. New city, new face. I felt sick, like the floor underneath me wasn't just shaking, it was gone. "How long have you known this?" I asked. "Long enough to know you weren't going to believe me unless you saw it for yourself." I wanted to be mad, but I couldn't be, because he was right. I had ignored every instinct, every subtle red flag, because I wanted Dallery to be real so badly. I let her write the script, and I played my part like a damn fool. Aiden and I spent the next 3 hours tearing through every piece of data on that flash drive. Logan showed up halfway through with food and that nervous energy he always carried when things got serious. We dug deeper. Bank accounts in offshore locations. A fake LLC tied to a string of shell companies Armani controlled. A backup plan labeled exit route, post-wedding, 2 weeks max. Dallery wasn't just walking out of my life. She was planning to walk out of the country. And every single second she'd spent with me was part of the act. I sat back and let it all sink in. The wedding wasn't a promise. It was a heist. I wasn't the love of her life. I was the final mark. What do you do when everything you built is seconds from being stolen? You don't run. You don't cry. You do what you would have done. You calculate. By the time the sun came up, I wasn't the same man who'd walked into that hotel suite with a suitcase. That version of me, the groom, the romantic, the believer, that guy was gone. What was left was someone colder, sharper, and done playing fair. Dallery wanted a wedding? Fine. She was going to get one. But it wouldn't end the way she thought it would. The first thing I did was call my bank. Every joint account, frozen. All automatic payments, canceled. Access, revoked. I played it cool on the phone. Said there were security concerns. They didn't ask questions. They flagged the accounts and locked everything down tighter than a vault. Next was her laptop. Dallery had once used my office computer to check emails. Left her session open once. I remembered her password, not because I was snooping, but because she used her birthday. Her real one. The one I'd seen on that fake ID. I logged in, installed remote access software. Quiet, undetectable. I watched as she messaged Armani later that morning. Everything's still on track. He's completely in love. I felt my jaw clench. I kept watching. Then I called my lawyer. Good guy. Older, discreet, the kind who doesn't ask why you want a prenup rewritten overnight. Just asks where to send the papers. We had drafted 1 month ago. Dallery convinced me to shred it. Said it was unromantic. But I never really shred anything. I had the original on file. All we had to do was update the language and slap in a few landmines. By lunchtime, we had a new prenup with teeth. I printed it, folded it, slid it into the inside pocket of my suit jacket like a weapon. Then came the wild card, Troy Finley. If Armani was the architect of this scam, Troy was the hammer I needed to hit back. I invited him for coffee. No drama, no panic, just business. I showed him the files, the photos, the company names, the account trails. He didn't speak for a full minute. Then he looked at me and said, I'm going to make some calls. You'll have an investigation by Monday. Quiet, surgical. He paused, then added, You sure you want to go through with the ceremony? I'm not marrying her, I said. I'm just setting the stage. He smiled, slow and deliberate. Now you're thinking like a Finley. I spent the rest of the day playing my part, smiling through rehearsals, cracking jokes with Logan, listening to Dallery talk about how perfect the ceremony would be. She was glowing, laughing, light as air, and every time she looked at me, I smiled back, like nothing had changed, like I was still hers. She had no idea that everything under her feet was about to collapse, that I was the one pulling the strings now, that I had learned from the best. Her. She thought I was too soft, too in love, too blind. She forgot I built a company from nothing. I know how to build, but I also know how to burn. The vineyard looked like something out of a dream. Golden hour light spilled over the rows of vines. White petals floated gently in the breeze. A string quartet played something delicate and hopeful. Guests smiled, hugged, sipped champagne. It was perfect, exactly how Dallery wanted it. She arrived in a vintage white car, stepping out like royalty. Every head turned. Cameras flashed. Someone whispered, She looks like an angel. She really did. Her dress hugged her like it was made for her alone. Her smile? Blinding. She carried herself with the grace of someone who thought she had already won. I stood at the altar, hands clasped, expression calm. On the outside, I was the picture of composure, suited up, standing tall, waiting for my bride. But inside, I was a storm dressed in silk. Logan stood beside me, eyes flicking to mine every so often, waiting for the signal. Aiden sat 3 rows back, quiet and locked in, like a soldier on standby. Troy leaned against a post at the edge of the crowd, arms crossed, watching everything. Dallery reached the altar. Her hand slipped into mine. It was soft, warm, fake. The officiant smiled, voice rising over the hush of the crowd. We are gathered here today to witness the union of... I didn't hear the words. I only heard the question I'd been waiting for. If anyone here objects to this marriage, speak now or forever hold your peace. The air froze, and I stepped forward. Gasps. Soft murmurs. Dallery's hand slipped from mine. I do, I said. My voice was calm, steady, cold. She blinked, stunned, her perfect smile flickering. A laugh escaped her lips, thin, nervous. Babe, is this part of? I reached into my jacket pocket and pulled out the flash drive. Held it up. Let the sunlight catch the red label, Keller Assets Plan. Then I dropped it at her feet. Thunk. Dallery, I said, loud enough for every guest to hear. Or should I say, Rena Leung? Dead silence. You could hear the wind blow through the vines. This wedding is over. Her eyes widened. Just a twitch in her left cheek. But it told me everything. She knew the game was up. And she had no countermove. I turned to the guests, my friends, my investors, my family. I know many of you came here to celebrate what you thought was love. But this wasn't love. It was a setup. I gestured toward Dallery. No, Rena. She's been running a long con. Alongside Armani Blair. Some of you may know him as a curator. He's actually a scam artist. They've done this before. There was a shuffle in the back. Armani was already trying to slip away. Troy caught my eye. He nodded. Security stepped forward, blocking Armani's path. Don't move, Mr. Blair, one of them said. We need to have a conversation. Gasps turned into murmurs. Murmurs turned into full-on shock. I looked back at Dallery. Her hands were trembling. She opened her mouth like she might try to explain, but nothing came out. Not a single word. For the first time since I met her, she had nothing to say. I stepped forward again, softer now. You thought you had me wrapped, that I wouldn't see it, but I saw everything. The shell companies, the fake name, the contract you signed under a name that doesn't even belong to you. Her parents stood frozen in the front row, faces drained of color. Guests were still holding their phones, too stunned to even press record. I turned one last time to the crowd. I came here today ready to give everything to a woman I thought I knew. But I've learned that love without truth isn't love. It's theft. I looked back at Dallery and added, You played the part beautifully, but this show is over. And then I walked. No one stopped me. No one said a word. Let them whisper. Let them remember. Let her choke on the silence. In the end, she didn't lose because I was smarter. She lost because I was finally watching. She tried. Of course she did. After the ceremony imploded in front of 50 guests, a violinist, and 3 drone cameras, Dallery, or Rena, did what people like her do when they're caught red-handed. She performed. Tears. Shaking hands. Broken voice. The whole, I didn't mean for it to happen like this, routine. She ran after me in the gravel lot behind the vineyard, dress trailing in the dust, mascara bleeding into her cheeks. Rogelio, please. It wasn't all fake. Not everything. I stopped walking. Let her catch up just enough to look me in the eye. She opened her mouth. I raised a hand. Don't, I said. Just don't. I didn't yell. I didn't rage. That would have given her power. She needed chaos, needed noise. But all I gave her was silence. Back inside, guests were still stunned. Some had left. Some stayed just to gossip. Armani had already been escorted off the premises by the private security team Troy had tipped off the night before. Word spread fast. Within an hour, my inbox was flooded with texts. Are you okay? Holy sh*T. This better not be some kind of performance art. Did she really try to steal your company? I didn't respond to any of them. I just drove. Drove until the hills flattened out and the sky turned purple. I didn't cry. Didn't scream. I just felt. And then, eventually I didn't. Later that night, I ended up back at my place. It was dark, quiet. The wedding decor people had already canceled their invoice. Aiden and Logan showed up without a word, like they just knew I'd need company. They brought 2 bottles of whiskey and a silence that only real friends know how to hold. We didn't talk much. Logan just raised his glass and said, "To dodged bullets." Aiden added, "And better aim next time." We laughed, maybe too hard, but it felt good, like cracking a window in a house filled with smoke. Then came the messages. From her. 11 voicemails. 23 texts, all of them some variation of, "Let me explain. I never meant to hurt you. It was real, some of it was real. Can we talk?" Each one chipped away at my peace. Each one tried to drag me back into the illusion she'd wrapped me in for 2 years. But I didn't reply. I opened my phone, scrolled to her contact, held my thumb over her name for a beat too long, then hit delete. Just like that. Gone. Final shot. The three of us, me, Logan, and Aiden, on the balcony. A bottle half empty. The city lights blinking in the distance. I turned to them, a smirk playing at the corner of my mouth. She thought I was her ticket out. Turns out, I was the roadblock she never saw coming. Speech balloon, what would you have done if you were in my shoes? Drop your answer in the comments. I read every single one. If this story hit you in the gut, do me a favor. Like this video. Hit subscribe. Share it with someone who needs to trust their gut. Because love should never feel like a trap. And sometimes, the best thing you can say at the altar is no.